Welcome back to Love, Money, Rock and Roll. We left off on this train. I believe we're reaching the climax of Kagome's story. Let's get into it. I deliberately took the seat opposite of her, and we didn't even look at each other the whole way back. Perhaps we were accomplices now, but I still need time to digest everything. The house greeted us with the deafening sound of Moriki's-san's snore. Where were you hiding him? What does it matter? Kagome shrugged, took off her shoes, and walked past me into the kitchen. I lingered a bit, thinking of what to talk with her the rest of the evening. We wouldn't just sit quietly until bedtime, would we? But Kagome had already started cooking dinner. I didn't want to eat it all, but I wanted to disappoint her even less, so I didn't say I wasn't hungry. You know, all this reminds me of a film somehow, or its never released sequel to be more precise. The protagonists have defeated all the world's evil and returned to their normal lives in their 6 tatami apartment. Have you ever thought about where they get the money from? Who pays them their salary? I'm not interested in comics, she replied in a bored voice. And manga? Kagome seemed somehow unreachably mature to me, and there I was with my comics and manga. Eat. Kidnapper or not, you still need to eat. How did Ellie feel eating once a day? These thoughts made me sick and I couldn't even look at the food. You don't want it? Got a stomachache. Why all of a sudden? I don't know, it just hurts. Thank you. I'll eat in the morning. Then I quickly walked to my room. Maybe I was just punishing myself over and over for my indecisiveness. There should be a certain script for detective stories in real life, right? But in the end, Kagome, both the victim and a criminal, and I, hopefully just a witness, were living under the same roof. Ellie couldn't be blamed for anything, but seemed to be suffering more than anyone else. Only Kobayashi-jin seemed to be following the script properly. People aren't interested in boring truth and always prefer a complicated explanation to a simple one. Somehow it seems to us that the abundance of details, as well as the twisted plot, are more trustworthy than a boring everyday story. Kidnapping Ellie was a detective story, but the rest, although it looked like a tragedy to me, would probably resemble a comedy to an outsider. But if my role really wasn't written in a script somewhere, could I change it? (26/09/1987). Kagome's plan was ridiculously simple. We had to wait for them to leave the documents in a mailbox, grab them, and then get out of there as quickly as possible. She spent a great deal of time looking for a mailbox she could force open easily. Even in theory, it all seemed dangerous. I'd woken up before she did and was already sitting in the kitchen, idly poking the cold dinner I ignored yesterday with my chopsticks. It was Saturday, which meant apart from enacting Kagome's suicidal plan, I had absolutely nothing to do. She finally appeared in the kitchen around 8 o'clock. She passed me on our way to the bathroom, yawning, but stopped in the doorway. You're up early. Today? Good morning. Good morning. You're a bit late. Moriki-san already woke up and left to meet his friends. Didn't you know? No, of course not. He told me. I let him go. I barely hid back a giggle. Even considering her grandfather's age, the treatment was still a little condescending. What, you want to say something? Nothing at all. We decided not to cook anything, but instead just heated up yesterday's dinner. By then I'd already had my share of it. Our cooking deserved the highest praise, even cold. So, let's go through our plan once again. Except it doesn't sound much like a plan, more like a suicide attempt. What do you suggest then? At the very least, we need a car. Do you have a driver's license? I don't, but I know someone who's both a license and a car, and that someone is Kyosuke. I answered briefly, stood up and walked back and forth around the kitchen, avoiding looking into her eyes. Couldn't you come up with a better idea? Not in such a short amount of time. Think for yourself, we wouldn't have a chance of escaping pursuit on foot, but a car would give us an advantage. Why don't... Of course, a car won't be able to be a silver bullet, but at least we'll have a chance. I didn't like the plan from the very beginning, but you'd do anything for Kobayashi's sake. She didn't let me finish, although I didn't know what I was going to say in the first place. But if it helps us get everything over and done with quickly and return to a normal life. What is it you're going to do next? Graduate from school and live somehow. Did you consider that Kobayashi is right? That her grandfather won't forgive us kidnapping him, no matter where we eventually let her go or not? I mocked her, counting my steps. But Nikolai, Kobayashi saw you too. Do you enjoy saying that? Not at all, but I'm disgusted to seeing you scrambling around. Scrambling? Why not finish the job first, then figure out how to live? There was no way to escape that, even if I decided to stay home. That's saying we might need help. I want to be done with it and stay alive and out of prison if possible. Apparently, she was quite against involving Kyosuke. What if I had someone else, not Kyosuke? Who then? I don't know what you're hoping for, but to me the future appears quite grim. What is revenge when beyond satisfying our primal instincts? If Kobayashi Jin let his enemies get away with this, like kidnapping his granddaughter, how long would he stay at the top? Fine. And it's not just about protecting his honor, but also the interest of the corporation. Fine. What would it look like if... Fine. What? If you think we need a car, let's get a car. Just spare me the lectures. Alright. What are you saying there? Go call your friend. Why don't you call Arena? I feel like the KGB would definitely help us. I had to say that we'd never been more sure about anything, and the plan was rock solid with no weak points. I didn't know what the extent he really wanted to help me, and to what extent it all seemed like a game to him. But under different circumstances, I of course would have never dragged Kyosuke into a dangerous affair. Of course I had no choice. I came back to the kitchen, where Kagami was pensively fiddling with a baklava, trying on this way and that. I see you're prepared. Looks good, I made it out of a ski mask. Did you arrange everything with him? I did. Then what are you unhappy about? I doubt he understands how dangerous it is. The car was your idea. I know, but still. What next? He must be from a wealthy family if he has a license and car at his age. I don't like to count other people's money. I'm just stating a fact, Nikolai, she said with feigned indignation. I guess I've never really been an envious person, but Kagome. Yesterday's fight with Ellie clearly showed she believed life had been unfair to her, to say the least. Soon I heard the sound of an engine car running. Where you honking? Nick, Iwamura-san? Kyosuke didn't know that we were the ones holding Ellie captive. Moreover, I had no idea how to tell him. Kyosuke, about Kobayashi. Wait. You see things. You heard Ellie is missing, right? Of course you have. Well, it's not we know where she is, but don't worry. We'll inform her grandfather about that once we get the documents we need. Are you saying that Ellie was kidnapped by her? But she's okay. Of course, everything's fine. I was glad to help you if it was for a good cause, but this is too much. What do you want from me? I only found out a few days ago. You understand, it's too late to retreat. Even if we release her now, what would we achieve? If everything works out and we get the documents, we'll at least guarantee we're safe. Maybe I shouldn't have gotten involved in the first place, but what's the point in talking about it now? It's not like I can convince her. Are you doing this for her? I'm also in danger. Nick, that's not what I'm talking about. Even if I shoot, what does it change? Well, it might alleviate your guilt a bit since you're doing it all for love. Quiet, you. I hissed at him and looked at Kagame, but she was just examining the car with a bored look on her face. Nobody was here was talking about love. Being your usual self, huh, Nick? What about Mitsu-san, Chan, Catherine-san? Enough already. I put my hands over his mouth and let out forced laughter to conceal my own awkwardness. We stopped on the street next to the one with the mailbox we needed. I couldn't imagine what the people that solve problems with Kobayashi Corporation would do. Were they gonna wait patiently and then capture and torture us to find Ellie's location? The so-called plan at Kagome's made their job significantly easier. So, Nick. Huh? What? We'll do this according to the plan? According to the plan, we had to drive to the mailbox, quickly retrieve the documents and floor it out of there. You have any better suggestions? No, but... I sighed and looked at Kyosuke. He sat with his hands tightly gripping the wheel, pretending to be carefully study something in the distance. If we get caught and they'll start to beat the crap for nation out of us, so you shouldn't keep it in. I can say with confidence I'll keep my mouth shut. I don't see a point in playing the hero. And it's not even about that. After we tell them what Ellie is, do you think they'll just let us go? Why do you think this is always think about failure? Because that's how humans are. We consider the chance of failure first. If people didn't think like that, there wouldn't be anyone to enjoy all the future successes. Fine, just see how I go myself. I'm not telling you to go alone, just... whatever, Kyosuke, get us closer. We stopped at the start of the street with the mailbox. It was a normal Saturday morning. There was no one outside, everything was serene and normal. I don't see anybody. I also haven't noticed anyone following us. you think people work from the corporation are amateurs enough if they let us spot them? Nico, nothing will change if we stay here and wait. If we get caught, then we will. Nick, I'm ready whenever. Kyosuke grabbed the wheel tighter. I couldn't find the courage yet, as if some invisible force was keeping me in the car. My legs felt like jelly, and my hands desperately didn't want to grab the handle to open the door. What was the point of being afraid when I'm almost at my goal? Alright, fine. I exhaled and gripped my mask. How long are you gonna keep dragging your feet? I turned around and realized that Kagome's facial expression, I wouldn't manage to hold her off any longer. She literally fought her way past me, waving her arms, kicking her legs around the mouth, forgetting to buckle out in the car. Maybe she hadn't forgotten it and simply stopped caring if anyone recognized her. She jumped on my legs again. It was happening, everything slowed, her hair flapping like the winds, her heels flying high over the pavement with every step just a little bit left. Drive. I whispered, unable to speak louder. What? Drive. I don't know what's happening, but we have to get out of here as soon as possible. Get in. I had no time to move to the backseat, so I just hopped out of the car, grabbed Kagome in my arms, and hopped back in together with her. No one else was pursuing us, which was strange in itself. We decided to stay in Kyosuke's apartment. Maybe it wasn't the best option, but since I dragged him into it anyway, the whole plan turned out to be a complete disaster, and most importantly, it was a complete mystery whilst nobody was waiting for us there. Maybe you got the wrong place? Every one of us seemed to want to say so much that nobody knew what to start with. Maybe you two would like something to drink. I have cola and iced tea. Water too, actually. I told you it was a crappy plan. We're alive. What more could you ask for? Apparently, Kobayashi-Jun had it all figured out. What makes you think that? No one else would be that interested in Akira Shinji. We may have only made the situation worse. What do you mean? I don't know. I don't know anything anymore. I walked back and forth across the room, constantly stumbling over things strewn about the place. Maybe you shouldn't have tried to get your father out that way. Easy for you to say. True. As a person who has nothing left to lose, it's hard for me to argue with her. I understand, but here I am. Get something to eat too. What would you like? He gave me a silly smile. Whatever you have, as much as possible. Nobody followed us. At least they haven't captured us. Doesn't it surprise you at all? Yes, it should. What are we supposed to do next? I wish I knew the answer. The morning I was been ready for anything, taken captive, but nothing happened. Although, it looked like a sequence of absolutely unbelievable coincidences. Gumi remained stubbornly silent. Didn't you even allow thought for your stupid idea might fail? Stupid. She reminded quietly and seemed ready to cry. Okay, that's not what I meant. I mean, yeah, I could repeat formal apologies and dole out supporting words like a record, but it always seemed empty and fake to me. Besides, I kept going at her for the stupid plan of hers, even though I knew it was pointless, and I really wasn't offering an alternative. Perhaps it was really worth the shot, but we tried and it didn't work. Now we have to move on somehow. I'm really worried by the fact that we were basically ignored. Nobody gave us the documents, followed us, or tried to capture us. Maybe he never got the letter in the first place. And if that's the case, we might be quite lucky. Lucky? You don't seem to care what happens to my dad. If I didn't care, do you think I'd be standing here? And it's for Kobayashi's sake that I left her tied up in that warehouse, right? Always again seemed unnecessary to respond. Asking for a ransom in a box. Who would even think of this? Then Kyosuke returned. I don't want to interrupt. We examined as one. Since we mentioned Ellie, so it is about Kobayashi. She interrupted and we should at least go check on her. You go if you need to. Do you understand from not getting our letter? The second most logical assumption would be the corporation has already found her. That's why they didn't even bother to catch us. Or that they even found her, but they don't know we were behind her kidnapping yet. Then when time works against us. Stay here, I'll call you later. But I was sure that forewarned is forearmed. This time I was heading to that warehouse in a different mood. If yesterday I hadn't wanted Ellie to be there, now I wasn't so sure. What are you dragging her feet for? Hurry up. What are you doing here? I'm not gonna save my dad if I just sit around doing nothing, so I've decided to help you one last time. Help me? I smirked and quickened my pace. Aren't you ashamed at all? But she didn't have anything to do with you. What's the point of this conversation? Where are you going? Will you let her go? If they got the note but didn't meet our mans, what else can I do? Keep pushing the idea with documents and ransom, but you aren't unhappy about it. Of course, it's good not to feel like a criminal anymore, you know. Except I really doubt her granddad will be satisfied with it. As soon as LA2 tells who really kidnapped her, do you think we can return to a normal life? My father's still being held captive by the corporation. I don't even know if he's alive. What kind of normal life can there be? Right, I didn't think about that. You didn't think. Kagome came closer than Japanese decency ally and suddenly smiled. It was getting colder with each passing day. Nikolai? I spaced out for a moment. Fine. You probably haven't decided what a normal life is for you. As if anything depends on my decisions. In a way, so far luck was on my side. But it would be foolish to think Ellie's grandfather would just forgive me and forget. Didn't Kagome realize that herself? You could say her behavior was reckless and she wasn't smart. You could, but... Of course, you have to have some luck in life. No two ways about it. You got lucky when you kidnapped her. What else would you call it? The right calculation? It doesn't matter, don't nitpick, as if the choice of words changes anything. Here's a simple example for you. Most players on the stock market have the same knowledge and information, but only a few of them win in the end. What does that have to do with anything? What I mean, it's entirely possible that you weren't the only one who tried to kidnap her, but you were the one who succeeded. Then I have something to be proud of. Suit yourself. The train brought us to our destination slowly, as if contemplating something. There were fewer people in the carriage than I expected, so Kagome and I didn't have to force our way through a crowd and found our seats in place. Although Saturday wasn't the best day to hurry anywhere, all that serenity and regularity suddenly made me anxious. It seemed that everything was happening so unhurriedly, only because it was the last road we would ever take. People sentenced to execution usually don't run to the gallows either. When we finally arrived and walked outside Kagome, aren't you afraid at all of what? If he got the note after all. I mean, there's a chance we won't find Ellie there. The thought did cross my mind too. You told me at Kyosuke's that you don't care. I don't. Alright, let's go. I wrote so quickly that she had to run up to catch up with me. Hey. We almost reached the warehouse when Kagome carefully took my hand and stopped me. Maybe I seem petulant to you sometimes, but I don't mean it. Since we don't have much time left to spend together, I want to tell you. Sometimes we have to make difficult decisions, the consequences of which aren't obvious right away. Wait, you. I grabbed her, pulled over, and put my hand over her mouth. Look, cars with sirens were packed outside the warehouse, policemen walking around. Well, here we are. Nikolai? Kagome looked at me with genuine fear in her eyes. Just as I said, let's get out of here and just don't run. We walked normally, but my heart was beating like crazy. When approaching the station, I stopped and looked around to whether somebody was expecting us here. But the fish market district looked lively and busy as always. Even if Kobayashi Corporation's people were hiding somewhere, it wouldn't be easy to spot them. That's what I was talking about. I'm not doomsaying, I'm just stating facts. If you want to tell me that's my fault, I'm not saying anything, it's not your fault at all. She said louder than needed, but there was no pressure from her voice. Well then, what do we do now, Dad? She wrapped her arms around her body and lowered her head. Don't go imagining the worst. They might have just not received the note. Your father's probably alright. After Kobayashi kidnapping, he might have decided that he posed a threat and it was too dangerous to keep him alive. At least we're safe at Kyosuke's place, or not. What, all phones in the city? You want to call Kyosuke-san? Well, yeah. What about grandfather? Grandfather. Moriyuki-san is of course a good person, but he doesn't present much value as a hostage. Nikolai? Kagome said in a wilting voice, looking at the telephone. We can't just leave him on his own. Yeah, right. It would have been improper to say your grandfather was totally senile, but unfortunately, he really couldn't be left on his own. I'll ask Kyosuke to take care of him. Yeah, why not? He's a decent guy when it comes to serious stuff. Maybe everything will work on its own somehow. I'd never expect fatalism like that from you. I'll have to wait for the receiver out of our hands. I mean, we can't protect everyone. Apart from us, nobody even needs a protection. What are we gonna do next? Neither of us had what it take to fight the corporation on equal ground. We had to escape. That seemed like the best option. I told you. What difference does it really make whether they found Ellie themselves or we let them go? What matters is who kidnapped her. Who kept her hostage for so long, hungry, cold. Fine, I agree it doesn't make sense to point fingers after the fact, but I thought you were ready for everything. I didn't think they'd find her so quickly. What? I didn't think they'd find her so quickly. Everything was supposed to go into plan, and yet he makes us suffer. Who's he? What do we do next? We better leave Tokyo, at least for a time. What about Grandfather? Grandfather will approve. Kyosuke will take care of him. Besides, the corporation has no interest in him. Think about it. If they were, he would have been taken together with your father back then. We just have to lay low for a time, until everything goes back to normal. In reality, I was in the situation everyone imagines no one believes would actually come. In Russia, many save for a so-called Black Day without realizing that if it really did come, their money wouldn't be enough. Or most likely, no money in the world could help at all. With the breakdown of the banking system, banknotes will become paper, and gold and diamonds that used to be worth millions will be exchanged for a piece of bread. Are there even extreme circumstances you can just confidently prepare for? Maybe if you had a bunker in the woods with food and stuff, or even better yet, a spaceship with warp engines. But thousands of people all around the globe get into car accidents, become the victims of criminals of disease every day. I saved my life, but I had no idea what to do with it next. And now, no matter how much I'd scold myself for everything that happened in part because of my own actions. The past few weeks, I felt like a blindfolded man walking down a narrow path along a mountain. One wrong step and the fall wouldn't be long. Where should we go? I drew up a map of Japan in my imagination, only to realize my knowledge of geography was far too limited for that trick. Though, I still knew some places outside Tokyo. There's a village. I've been there with my parents when I was little. It's quite far and I hope they won't be looking for us there. What about money? I'll have to call Kyosuke. Nobody was following us. After a couple hours, we were standing in front of the familiar bar that I hoped I wasn't seeing for the last time. That's all I have, Nick. Even that wasn't easy to find. He handed over a pretty thin envelope to me. Thank you for it. How's my grandfather? Did you remember everything we said? We agreed that I'd give the key to my house to Kyosuke and he'd visit Muraki-san several times a day. Plus, Kagome had given a note for our grandfather to our simple-minded friend we now had to rely on for so much. I'll drop by your place right after we say goodbye. You can count on me. Kagome-san? Somewhere deep inside I understood the potential interest of the corporation in Akira Shinji. The former leader of the project far outweighed their desire to take revenge on two conceited school kids. So for now it'd be better if we got far away from the epicenter as was possible. Better for everyone. So where are you off to? You realize you're better off not knowing, right? Oh, yeah, right. Good luck. Kagome-san? You don't think much of Kyosuke until recently, right? What? Nothing. Let's go. We still need to buy the tickets. I thought of Irina on my way there. She said we'd better keep in touch. But I had no way to get in contact with her quickly, and I couldn't afford to wait. Besides, did I have any reason to trust her? Irina had made it very clear the KGB only needed information from me, and information was just something I didn't have. And I had Kagome on my side, which didn't make my mission any easier. In the end, I could only count on myself as usual. Tokyo was left far behind, the sun disappearing to the hills to the west. Kagome sat opposite me, looking out the same window. Over the last 10 years, I hadn't left the city often, and I only knew the village we were heading to because I'd gone there a couple times in the summer when I was a child. Maybe it wasn't the best choice, and we should have gone for somewhere by the Sea of Japan. Kagome didn't argue when I suggested the village, and I wasn't running deeper into the country just yet. We wouldn't be able to escape Kobayashi Corporation while in Japan anyway, and to leave the islands, we'd need a plane, money, and connections. Looking at Kagome, it was hard to say what she was thinking about. Was she worried that we had abandoned everything and run away? Probably was. Anyone in her shoes would be. To add that, Kagome had lost everything she had with her restaurant. Even if the corporation wasn't on our tail, her family future was uncertain to say the least. In a way, the situation was easier for me than her. I wasn't particularly attached to what I had. The house was only a series of time-worn walls that, after my parents' death, mostly held painful memories of long-gone days of peace and happiness. If I were to forget about the danger of Kobayashi Corporation, fewer things had changed in my life than I was ready to admit. After school, I'd have to make ends meet anyway, whether it was in Tokyo or somewhere else didn't matter much. At least now I wasn't alone. There used to be Himitsu in my life and full-time Catherine, but sitting next to Kagome, I felt something completely new. Maybe we weren't too similar, had many interests in common or topics to discuss, but united by a common purpose, we were closer now than ever. Sorry that it turned out like this. I finally broke the silence. What are you apologizing for? I don't know. I just wanted to say something to cheer you up. It feels like you lost more than I did. Did I? She replied phlegmatically and went back to observing the country landscape outside the window. It was indeed unusually peaceful there, far from the noisy city life. It's like we're on holiday. If I didn't know you that well, I'd say you aren't concerned about everything that happened at all. Do you know me well? I'd like to think so. I grunted, feeling a bit affronted. Come on, don't get upset. We did go through a lot together. She didn't exactly sound insincere, but I felt praise for a child after their performance at a kindergarten recital. In the end, everyone gets praised no matter how well they played. I just don't understand how you managed to remain so calm. Yeah, if you start worrying, things don't go well. Whatever the case, living on your own house in the capital is much more comfortable than hiding out in some backwater province. However, I couldn't help but admit she was consistent. While I was shifting around, at one moment I wanted to praise and support her, but at the next I wanted to shout and lambast her. I just couldn't understand what feelings I had for the girl. And that lack of understanding angered or rather scared me. Don't blame yourself, Nikolai. It's not your fault. What's my fault? Nothing. You just look like you expect me to chastise you. Well, yes, the thought did cross my mind. I smiled in response. What would I chastise you for? What for? Well, let's say for the fact that I only have... I reached for a wallet to count my money and stopped myself, realizing it was pointless. It's not like it would suddenly multiply. What, Nikolai? Are you not used to counting your coins? She seemed to have read my mind. There it is. Kagome made a complicated face as she'd been caught red-handed but really didn't want to admit it. That's not even what I'm talking about. Money isn't the most important thing here. The only people who think money isn't important live in luxury. Kagome said preachily and stared out the windows again. So you think I lived in luxury? Fine, whatever you say. Indeed, the little money we had probably wouldn't last us very long. In order to leave the country, we needed fake passports or at least enough money to pay some Chinese fishermen. It sounded difficult enough even in theory, even if I had pockets full of cash. Kagome sighed and I saw something akin to sympathy in her eyes. Nikolai, like you said, it doesn't make sense to point fingers now, but I too would like to save my father and not leave my grandfather behind. Besides, I'm worried about leaving him alone with Kyosuke-san. But right now, we need to take care of ourselves first. I wanted to believe her, but the future seemed far too nebulous. It's difficult to jump down a bridge into a muddy river, hoping it's deep enough. Meanwhile, Kagome and I had been tossed into a whirlpool head first. I wish I had accepted Ellie's offer. I could have been playing bass in Zed Fails and lived on Easy Street. (26/10/1987). Still, this wasn't how I imagined work. When we arrived in the village, it became clear almost right away that Kyosuke's money wouldn't last long. Sure, Kagome easily got a job at the only local joint, although you couldn't call it a restaurant, even compared to Gifts of the Sea. I meanwhile wasn't much of a cook, and all the other unskilled work in the village was taken by local kids and teenagers. Why would they need a grown-up loafer, let alone one not Japanese? I only had one most obvious left: hard menial labor. Next to the men was a coal mine that, miraculously, hadn't been depleted this far into the 20th century, where most of the local men worked. In places like that, nobody asks for a CV, university degree, or letter of recommendation. As long as you got your arms and legs, aren't disabled, and can swing a pickaxe, you're welcome. Besides, it wasn't common there to ask about the past of new miners. Not everyone enjoyed talking about that subject. My colleagues were generally good people, albeit a bit quiet and gloomy. They must have been surprised that a European-looking guy had come to work in a coal mine out in the Japanese countryside, but nobody showed it or asked me any questions. I was fine with it, and they paid decently. Not that I was in any condition to complain. Kagome and I rented a single room for two at the local hotel to cut costs. At first I was a little embarrassed by the prospect of living together with a girl at my age in a 6 tatami space, while she didn't seem bothered at all by the situation. She earned less than me at her place, but also worked few hours. Sometimes returning home after my shift, I could only fall into my futon exhausted. Kagami organized our everyday lives as much as possible considering the situation. She cooked, cleaned, and washed our clothes, but it was a sensible division of responsibilities considering the difference in our income and skills. No matter how much I tried, I couldn't exactly feel too much gratitude. I didn't socialize much with the other minors at work, except for obligatory Japanese drinking parties. Almost all of them had families, and they preferred to spend their free time with them. Meanwhile, Kagame instantly became beloved by the local old ladies, but thanks to her cooking and politeness. Mostly the obligatory kind though. Besides, having someone new in this village was already exciting enough. Of course she got lots of questions. Who was she, where she came from, what she was doing there. Kagame wasn't stupid. That I didn't have to worry about, and remained heroically silent, only giving short, pointless explanations. And of course, the female half of the community couldn't quite leave alone the matter of us living together. After a short discussion, we decided it'd be easy to conform to their expectations and pretend we were a couple. Once again, I found it difficult to calmly accept all these unexpected twists of fate that were slowly and inevitably forcing us closer. At the same time, she was miraculously resilient, pretending none of it had anything to do with her at all. Or perhaps I was the only one reading more into the situation. It was hard for me to define my feelings for Kagame clearly. Against the wishes of writers and dramatists, war and love do not go well together. In a sense, we were at war, our own little war with Kobayashi Corporation. The problem was we had no chance to switch to an offensive. All we could do was retreat. The longer we hid living like this, the harder it got for me. Maybe it was more like Kagame's character to handle hardships and misfortune, so she found it easier to adapt to her new environment. But I woke up every day with a pain in my entire body and a desire to die. You'd think my muscles would get stronger over time, but either my body wasn't designed for this kind of work or too little time had passed. In any case, it got more and more difficult each day. And though physically I still felt like I had some reserves left, mentally I was at my limit. The only consolation was the villagers soon accepted us and stopped paying us any real attention. I don't know how it happened. Maybe it was due to the charms Kagame had up until then hidden from me. And yeah, she was much friendlier at her new workplace than she used to be at our own restaurant. Every time I dropped by to check on her, the regulars would always whisper out what a lovely couple we were. Naturally, Kagame paid no attention to it, but I find it difficult to ignore this kind of gossip. Then at some point, I caught myself thinking that I was used to it. It didn't happen at once, like an epiphany. Just one day, I realized as I was returning from work that I was eager to get into our small hotel room, see Kagame and tell her how my day had gone. To be honest, there wasn't much to tell. One day in mine is like much another. Kagame didn't enjoy talking about everyday trifles, and there wasn't much going on in the village anyway. It was for the better. But the mere thought that I accepted our current situation, it didn't scare me, but annoyed me like the label of a shirt rubbing against your neck. Had I accepted it as normal just because time had passed, or was it because of Kagame? I'm sure she couldn't fail to notice my inner turmoil, but she didn't give any sign she did. Time passed, and the threat of Kobayashi Corporation turned from clear to tangible into distant and ephemeral. Anxiety over the corporation gave place to anxiety over my relationship with Kagame. The first few weeks I'd been afraid to call Kyosuke or anyone else in Tokyo. But eventually Kagame and I took a train to some nameless substation. Kyosuke informed us that her grandfather was safe, he was seeing him regularly and we had nothing to worry about. Kagame was sincerely happy and I also felt relieved. I asked Kyosuke about the corporation, but he hadn't seen anyone following him or anything. That was strange. That'd mean they'd somehow found and freed Ellie and they'd left us alone. Could she have not even told her grandfather who had kidnapped her? Then maybe he wouldn't have had to run away from Tokyo at all. That thought ate away at my determination with each passing day. Sometimes I just wanted to ditch everything and go home and be what may. But every night, walking into our small room and seeing Kagame, I immediately forgot this silly thought. I could blame her for us being there all I wanted, but right now more than anything else, I wanted to protect the girl I had just recently blamed for all my misfortunes. October came to an end, the fog was getting denser, and I had to get ready for work when twilight still reigned outside. While I was forcing myself to get up, Kagame was still peacefully asleep. Yeah, my shifts at the mine finished earlier than hers did, but if I could, I would have gladly swapped places with her to sleep a bit longer. How long were we supposed to live like this? It had already been a month. And then there'd be a year, and the next one, and the next one. What came first for me is this kind of life itself, or the fact that I had to lead it together with Kagome. How long could we keep sharing a room? Today, the monotony of the daily grind was broken by an uncommon event. An accident happened in the mine. One of the miners had his leg run over by a trolley, so we were let home earlier. I think this is meant to be like the epilogue or something. So, If Ian did end up disabled and couldn't work, what happened to his family? What would happen to me if I were in his place? Would Kagome take care of me? On the way home, I bought some groceries and entered the hotel with my head full of heavy contemplation. Kagome stood at the hall, thoughtfully looking at the phone. Hi? She flinched and looked at me like she had done something wrong and expected punishment for it. Why are you home so early today? Yeah, let's go early. Just like that, for no reason. But there's no point in hiding the truth. Mado-san forgot to put a trolley on a handbrake and got his leg run over. Was it bad? I don't know. He definitely got a fracture, maybe more than one. You have a dangerous job, Nikolai. Well, yeah. Still, what was she doing here? And you, were you gonna call someone? Me, no. And who would I call? Aren't you worried about your grandfather? Oh, of course I am, but I agreed we'd only call Tokyo together. Had we? I couldn't recall anything like that. Alright, fine. Here, I bought some food. Kagome took the groceries from me and went to the kitchen to cook dinner. The evening crawled in quietly. If you looked at outside you could probably get the impression that she was perfectly fine with our situation. After all, Kyosuke had let us know that her grandfather was okay. Kagome no longer talked about him, the corporation, or our plans for the future. She also didn't mention anything about our father, as if the problem of his kidnapping had disappeared after our unsuccessful blackmail attempt. Every person deals with difficulties in their own way. But wasn't that her attitude akin to fatalism or even apathy? I definitely wasn't planning to work with a pickaxe until my hair turned gray, quietly waiting for an unfixed trolley to run over my leg. Kagome, had she said she wasn't going to work her whole life at the restaurant? Had she given up and accepted her fate so easily? Not to mention today. Kagome skillfully carried 2 plates in a bag. Maybe I wanted something more than noodles and vegetables, but it was all we had. Mado-san? She began with the look on her face like she'd been dragged to a funeral of her third cousin of her grandmother she'd never seen in her life. Mado-san would have been touched by her empathy. Is he gonna be okay? I'm not a doctor, but it looked pretty bad. Nikolai, please be careful. As if I have a choice. At least you've put on some muscle. She suddenly smiled. It's just a physiological process, nothing to do with me. If you say so. Look, I've been thinking. We've been in this village for a while. Isn't it time to decide what we're gonna do next? What do you mean? We can't live our whole lives like this, I suppose. I'm not forcing anything, but don't forget whose fault for us being here. Who then? Alright, that's not what I meant. It's just time is passing by and we... Do you want to go back to Tokyo? It doesn't matter what I want. Whether I want it or not, it's impossible. But do you want to? And you don't? You make it sound like we're stuck here because I want us to be. You still working in a restaurant, but what if I'd never lifted anything heavier than a beer bottle before? Do you think I want to become the next cripple after Mado-san? Are you going to take care of me? And even if you are, will you have the time, energy, and money? Sorry, I didn't mean to. It's just we're in the same boat, but sometimes I feel like I'm the only one rowing. Not even sometimes, often. Maybe I'm rowing in the opposite direction. Thanks for the food, Kagome. The sarcasm in my voice was almost enough to make the plate ring. While Kagome was washing dishes in the shared kitchen, I didn't know what to busy myself with. It'd be another good hour. It isn't an easy task to clean up all the dirt from under the ground. Going back to the village on the company's bus was another half an hour. And when I would come back, rush hour at Kagome's place would only just be starting. Luckily enough, unlike in Tokyo, the establishment here stayed open late into the night. People were used to getting up and going to bed early. Kagome would come back home when I was starting to fall asleep, quickly making dinner for us, and then we'd go to sleep. We didn't have too much time to talk on weekdays, and she'd often end up working on weekends too, as those hours paid the most. We lived in this village for a month already, but how much time had we really spent together? Maybe it'd be only logical to call such a relationship forced cohabitation. Kagome was sitting at the street looking at the window. The few villagers still at this late were hurrying home. I was idly flipping through the pages of some manga I had bought at the local store. There was no hope to find anything better in this backwater. Somehow, I'd always look away from the pages and shift my gaze towards Kagome. Was she bored? For now, I was managing to persuade myself that it was better to live like this than not live at all. But sometimes, I felt like I was about to go crazy from depression and monotony. Kagome, on the other hand, could spend hours just watching the people that idly passed the hotel. It was because she's had to go through a complete change of her life once, so she adapted to the new circumstances easier. Are we just gonna sit in silence? What's there to talk about? After today's accident with Mada-san, I'm starting to wonder who's next. This sort of accident is common in mines, and I'm not exactly a brilliant miner. Maybe you should find something else. Like what? We could use someone who can wash dishes. Sometimes there's so many guests that we just can't handle them all. Even if I'd agreed to the job, how much would it pay? Less than the mine. Exactly my point. Would it be enough to make ends meet? In a way, Kagome had an easier relationship with money than I did. She was used to cutting costs and I didn't see it as much of a problem. In contrast, the thought of only eating plain rice terrified me. Are you unhappy with your life? Are you happy with it? I smirked powerlessly. If we can't change anything, what's the point of complaining? Can't change anything, I grumbled. We shouldn't have let things come to this in the first place. But after all, we were gonna live together for quite longer. What's the point in starting a relationship? Live together for quite a while. These words were painting our future a bit too intimately. Everything's great. But following the stupid knife plot bored me quickly. Maybe it was time to ditch Shonen for sign-in. Maybe we should go somewhere. For example, well, I don't know. Besides, it's late. Yeah, it is. You know, I thought despite Mada-san's misfortune, we'd finally get a chance to be together. What are you implying? Nothing. I immediately felt the blood rushing to my cheeks and lowered my head. So, are you asking me out, Nico-san? I could hear playful notes in her voice. How long ago had I fallen in love with this girl? How long had I realized that Kagome had simply become more to me than just a partner in crime? The thought burnt my body like a shot of boiling water and ruined my ability to think clearly. Was there a reason for my feelings? A starting point? Right now it didn't matter. Even if so, I said quietly. I understand that you didn't want to get stuck in this place together with me. I understand that you'd prefer it if it's that red-haired friend of yours, that American girl or Kobayashi, but it is what it is. Why would you think that? Isn't it true? I've never said that. If people said everything they think, maybe we'd all have a better life then. So is there something you're not telling me, Nico? I grew desperately wanted to cool down. I'll step out, I need to go to the toilet. I walked to the room unnaturally slowly and immediately down the stairs to the ground floor. The owner of the hotel, an old lady, was sleeping behind the reception desk. I had taken to a liking at first sight, as it turned out later, not without reason. Not only she was kind and polite, but she didn't ask unnecessary questions. Although she was adamant about providing a discount for renting the room long term. The fact I had managed to fall in love with Kagome seemed weird and wild, like I had lost my mind without even noticing. How do you even tell if you've lost your mind? Although there were plenty of hints, of course. Take, for example, my irrational desire to protect her even against my own interest. But then what was I to do? How could I look her in the eyes after realizing my feelings? Suddenly, the desire to go back to Tokyo and have my old life appeared so pointless. If we were together, the location didn't matter to me, whether it was the capital of Japan or a backwater village. But I was the only one who felt an instant change in my outlook for her life. For Kagome, nothing had changed. Did she love me? What did she even think about Nikolai Anakin behind her solemn and detached mask? I didn't want to go back to that room, but it didn't seem like a good idea to keep standing in the hall for no reason either. Suddenly, I started to suspect that Kagome would suspect I was doing something wrong if I stayed here long. She was still sitting at the window looking out the street. You back? Yeah. We kept sitting like that in almost complete silence, only rarely exchanging a few words until late into the night. Good night. The time I dragged my futon further than usual away from hers to the other end of the room. Good night, Nikolai. It seemed like just the day before everything had been fine and perfect in order, and I hadn't been worried about us sleeping in the same room. But now my back was going numb every 2 minutes, and I had to toss and turn a lot. I desperately wanted to fall asleep, wake up tomorrow with a fresh head, and try to figure out what I was supposed to do next. But sleep refused to come. Kagome laid quietly. I tried to listen carefully, but I couldn't even hear her breath. Knew love should bring it with it happiness. But so far, the only thing I felt was growing acidic anxiety. What would tomorrow bring? (27/10/1987). So much dialogue. Strangely enough, I quickly got used to waking up with an alarm, even though there'd been a time when I thought it was the worst punishment for a free man at the end of the 20th century. The awful sound of the devil's machine abruptly brought me back to reality, while Kagome didn't seem to notice at all, carrying on sleeping while I got ready for work. Of course I couldn't expect her to wake up this early just to see me out, but sometimes it felt like I'd already done and continued to do too much for her and yet got nothing in return. Now I knew why. It was love. A classical case, straight out of the books. I was walking to my workplace, drowning in the morning fog. The only thought keeping me warm today was payday. I guess finances had never really bothered me as much as now, and we only needed that money to survive. But just after evening, I found something more important to me than that. Even if by some miracle everything would get resolved, I'd still have to live on with that newfound feeling. And strangely enough, it brought anxiety rather than happiness. I wasn't sure that Kagome would reciprocate. Of course, she warmed up to me in the time we'd spent together, but hand on my heart, we could barely be called friends, let alone a couple. Fellows in misfortune, maybe, but no more than that. And this is how I was starting a new chapter of my life, one that I wanted to share with her. The CAT scan revealed that Mado-san wasn't as serious as it looked, which meant he'd recover after a while. We all felt relieved about that. Minors stick together, and something that happens to one of your coworkers might have well happened to the rest of you. Nobody's immune to accidents. Any moment the ground might collapse, a trolley might go off the roads, or gas might explode. That wasn't the job I dreamed of a month ago. In fact, if I only had a very vague idea of what I was going to do in the future. But hard manual labor definitely wasn't on the list. Any healthy person usually overestimates his abilities. Likewise, I thought that even lacking knowledge and persistence, I could, so to speak, keep rolling using my wit and intuition. However, in Japan, keeping things rolling isn't embedded in the culture. Even Yakuza follow a straight of internal rules and hierarchy. Celebrities don't light up the sky of the local music industry just thanks to their talent and luck. Usually that was the hard work of dozens of agents and producers behind their success. Japan was as logical, as predictable of a production line country as could be. Maybe that's why we found ourselves in that position, by trying to block that production line. Our boss gave us a little bonus today, so the guys and me left to celebrate it and invited me along. But I turned the invitation down, leaving none of them happy. Whatever. I wanted to spend the extra money to buy a gift for Kagome. I was walking up down the main, in fact only street of the village, all the way from the grocery store to the hardware store passing the clothes store. What can I buy for her? I had absolutely no idea what she liked or what she was into. In her free time, she preferred to look out the window or silently think about something. Typical female gifts don't quite match her image in my mind. I could have bought Himitsu a cheap necklace out of the window of a shop by the kind old lady. Himitsu, the memory of her brought sadness. Himitsu and Kagome were so different. At the same time, she and Catherine probably had something in common. Next to this necklace stood a small snow globe. Maybe that was it. Kagome would have probably been happy to appear in the place whose miniature copy was trapped inside that glass ball. To appear in Paris. Kono-san said that I was examining her wares and walked out to the front of her store. It turned out that in the next few days they were going to have an autumn festival dedicated to some local spirit that apparently used to guard the mountain outside the village. Many Japanese still took their traditions of honoring spirits very seriously. Those spirits usually connected to particular places, and a festival itself was a good event to go to. As a child, I'd only gone a couple times at Himitsu. Himitsu again. I wasn't particularly sorry about leaving my old house, school, friends, or even Tokyo behind, but parting with Himitsu caused a dull pain in my heart every time I thought about it. Though in reality, it We had parted long before that. Maybe even the day when Catherine returned and I started my search for Akira Shinji. Everything that happened after that could be the spasming of a dying friendship that never became something more. Kono-san was definitely good at her trade. Made a passing remark about how my girlfriend would need a yukata. But the prices of traditional Japanese clothing she sold were a complete mismatch with my miner's wage. Kono-san quickly estimated Kagome's size and offered me a few color variations. But burning the entire half of my paycheck just for a little fun one time. Only yesterday that argument might have been convincing, but now I was in a new reality where love held my purse strings. Besides, I'd never known how to spend money wisely, let alone save it. A snow globe in a guide, a yukata wrapped in thick paper, the bright sun shining its rays on the village. This was the best day in a very long time. I suddenly realized I was smiling, or rather, grinning idiotically, but it didn't bother me at all. Let them look, I was in love and had nothing to be ashamed of. A few women holding basins with clothes did actually cast surprised looks at me, but I couldn't care less. Noticing that, they left quietly, covering their mouths with their hands, and quickly entered the bathhouse. Every person has the right to be happy, don't they? Why did I have to be bothered with other people? The only variable that was preventing me from solving this equation was Kagome. I was so full of happiness that I forgot that only happy love is one returned in kind. I guess this had been with Katia too. A simulacrum of her in my mind had completely replaced the real Catherine, but now things were way more complicated, as I had no idea what the real Kagome was like. If I dug deeper, was I even in love with the right person? As for Catherine, the dang simulacrum was as close enough to the real person, so I needed that question answered. The sooner the better. Kagome lay on the floor reading a book. Murakami and some forest. I only managed to catch the glints of the title on the cover. Are you reading? She only tilted her head in response. Is it interesting? Where do you get it? This place hasn't seen any literature since it's been built apart from manga. I brought it from Kano-san. Kano-san, huh? I felt like a prosecutor combing over a witness statement. I have something for you. Here. Without any second thoughts, I took out the snow globe out of the bag and handed it to her. Komi didn't seem to understand what I wanted from her first. Opened her mouth slightly and looked at me in surprise. Then she grew embarrassed, took the snow globe and turned upside down. Big flakes of snow fell onto the Eiffel Tower. You shouldn't have, really. Come on, they gave me a bonus at work. You'd better have saved money. Who knows when we might need it. If you always save for a rainy day, when you're supposed to enjoy the sunny ones. You won't be saying that when the day comes. Yeah, sure. On the other hand, I now understood Kagome much better, particularly of how difficult it was for her to lose everything she had after her mother's death. Saving every yen, saying no even to the most essential items. Poverty holds you in a vice grip, slowly exhausting you, sucking all life from you. Then slowly, silently, every desire to strive for something more, move forward and evolve disappears. You can only think about survival. Poverty doesn't put you in mind to buy a yukata or enjoy a festival. Oh, right. I explained awkwardly, backing away to the door. The landlady asked me for help. I'll be back in a moment. Kono-san was definitely good at her trade, and she wasn't too happy when I went to return the yukata and ask for a refund. Next to hear about lunar phases, Chinese calendars, and prediction of a wise woman. But I still couldn't show the yukata to Kagome. Thankfully, the landlady agreed to keep it for some time. Disappointed, I returned to our room. That was quick. Didn't take long. Did something happen? I'm just tired from work. How's Mato-san? Alright, turns out his fracture isn't that serious, so he'll walk again. I'm glad to hear that. Now that I realized how important this girl was to me, was as if I had to get to know her anew. Every gesture, every look, every slight movement of her lips or little sighs. Must be hungry. Yeah, it'd be nice to eat something. Everything was delicious as usual. Having completely emptied the bowls, I carefully put away the chopsticks and looked at Kagome. What? Thank you. For what? She got embarrassed. For the food. It was delicious. You're welcome. She froze for a moment like a lion about to pounce and took out a cassette from under the table. Here, it's for you. We got a bonus too. A new album from one of my favorite bands. Wow, I was genuinely excited. I saw their poster on the wall. I was living at your house. Besides, it was very cheap. Probably cheaper than that trinket of yours. I was a little offended when she called the snow globe a trinket, but I was too happy about Kagome's gift to say anything. It wasn't even the cassette itself. The only player I could listen to it didn't exactly have great sound quality. I didn't want to assume anything. The gift might have just been out of formality. Thank you, I'm really glad, honest. Come on, what's so special about it? You're acting like it's a briefcase full of cash and not a cassette. You know what people say, it's the thought that counts. You stare at water all you want, but you need to learn how to swim before you dive into it. What do you mean? If you hadn't helped me and my grandfather, we wouldn't have to stay here. Was she really gonna start blaming me again? Maybe we wouldn't even be alive. Come on, don't say that. I probably did have my reasons to blame her for what had happened, but now I couldn't even think about that. I was thankful that we'd ever met in the first place, even though I had to sacrifice almost everything I had for it. In any case, I'm glad that. Was I really confess? Not that I'm glad, I mean, despite some minor inconveniences. Minor inconveniences? Got me laugh sincerely. You're either very patient or very silly. Or very much in love. I lowered my head, pretended I was carefully studying the empty bowl. Not everyone would do that for someone they barely know. What do you mean by that? I don't know, I just wondered, what would I have done if we'd switched places? It's a simple question that requires a very complicated answer. That's alright, I understand you don't need to say anything. After all, I didn't help you for your thanks. And not for your own advantage? She suddenly leaned forward, getting close to my face. What sort of advantage could I get out of it? I felt my neck start to sweat. The disgusting feeling. Huge droplets of sweat running down my neck made me even more nervous. I think you know exactly what I mean. The snow globe is one thing, but a yukata? You thought you could trick me? How would I trick you if I'd already bought it? Then why were you hiding it? I just heard about a festival from Kana-san and decided it wouldn't be good to go without proper clothing. You could have asked me first if I want to go. I know, we don't have much money and I can't burn it like that. You still haven't asked me whether I want to go, do you? I hadn't even thought about it this morning, but since you're putting me on the spot, you can always refuse. Well, knowing Kana-san, I very much doubt it. Listen, I could go back, get on my knees and beg for a refund. Don't. I said don't. Instead, bring the yukata here, I want to try it on. I hesitated, not knowing what to do next. Was she mocking me, or did she really like the festival idea? I couldn't believe the latter, but decided not to argue and went down for the yukata. The yukata fit Kagome so well it seemed like it was made for her. It suits you. Let's see. She was as happy as a child. I might have accepted such a reaction from Mimitsu, but not from the ever-serious Kagome. We walked out to the hall with its big mirror, and Kagome started spinning around in front of it, looking at herself from different angles. The landlady complimented both the yukata and Kagome. If I forgot how much I'd spent on the thing, everything seemed to be going a little too smoothly. I could think of something to worry about even when nothing was going on, and now I have a good reason. When we returned to the room, Kagome squinted slyly and said, "You look like you're waiting for a punishment, but we really can't afford this sort of thing. What's the point of talking about that now, since we can't return it?" Well, I'm glad you think so. Where's the catch? I really don't know why I did that. Why about something so expensive? You know our life isn't a paradise, and I saw an opportunity to distract ourselves a little. You don't have to come up with excuses. If it's only about the money, what else would it be about? Nothing. She scoffed at me. You see, you're mad about something again. I'd been called the first two before insensitive. Well, Kagome, you're hard to please. You started it. Well, too. Started what? When you don't understand what the other person is mad at you for, the person you love, if you want to tell me something, don't you want to tell me anything? What was she trying to say? As if out of a thick and unexpected hunch began to take shape in my mind. To be honest, I wasn't going to do it so soon, if you were any other girl. But we've been thrust together by fate. We're fellows in misery, and relationships like that rarely last longer and well. I was talking absolute drivel and shifting my gaze around the room. It's pleasant to think that she's waiting for me to declare my love for her, except I was completely unprepared for it. I guess it took a really long time for me to realize my feelings for you, and everything happened so quickly. Nikolai? Her voice was ice cold. So, what do you want to tell me? I want to say, judging by her reaction, it seemed my love confession would be followed by my head becoming a target for every object in the room, light enough for her to pick up. Why was this so difficult? I love you, Kagome. If she didn't want to hear a long speech, I'd keep it short. Kagome's eyes opened wider and wider. I'd prepared to defend myself against dishes, chairs, or something more dangerous. Took you a while. Suddenly her face quivered and tears swelled in her eyes. What? I was waiting so long I almost gave up hope. So you, too? I was probably ready for any reaction, but not reciprocity. It wasn't even that I was confident of myself as a man or didn't understand her as a woman. It was Kagome. If it were any other girl in her place, I would have understood my feelings much earlier. Nikolai, you're asking a Japanese girl to confess her love for you. I don't know how it is in your country, but we have certain rules. Her ruin sounded just as silly as mine. I'm not asking for anything. I'm just glad that you, too. Sorry, I'm really nervous. I really felt like I was on tenterhooks. Here you go apologizing again. It was hard for me to keep looking at her and stick to the rules she talked about, so I lowered my head and stared at the empty bowl on the table. What are you supposed to do next? What do you mean? It was hard enough to start living in a room with a young man, and now... Of course, I thought about it more than once, but when Kagome put it that way, the problem started to seem much more serious. I'll behave like a gentleman, you have nothing to fear. Except, she quietly said, I don't know if I can behave like a lady. Happy endings. 28/10/1987. Everyone's heart builds up scar tissue as years go by. In the end, it's all about finding someone who won't recoil when you bare your soul to them. Of course, I was still very young, and so was Kagome, but it still seemed to me that she'd experienced much more than I had in 18 years. Maybe her main fear was that I could think if I looked inside her. It's not that easy to open up to another person. I'd probably never been afraid of it because I thought I had nothing to hide, and conceptually, wasn't that much different from most other people. I had no dark secrets or skeletons in my closet, perverted fantasies or fetishes. I didn't have a mortal grudge against anyone, and I wasn't planning any sort of revenge. I wasn't interested in politics or economics. Philosophical questions bothered me more than real social problems. In a sense, I was the one of the people who were quiet when it came for the communists. The only thing such a person might fear when opening up is to someone else is they might be considered worthless or unremarkable. I woke up pretty early, tried to move, and realized my left arm and shoulder were completely numb. Kagome was sleeping, pressed to me and holding a tight grip. I carefully freed myself from her embrace, got up and stretched my arms. What did last night mean to us? Absolutely, need to go outside and get some fresh air. The freezing cold morning greeted me with a fog and pleasant chill. I didn't know how winter was here in the mountains, but I bet it'd be colder than Tokyo. A yukata wouldn't be exactly considered warm clothing, something we definitely need. I walked down an almost deserted street, wondering where I could find the money. Almost deserted. Himitsu was walking towards me wearing a beautiful yukata. Of course, somewhere in my memory, I knew Himitsu's grandmother lived not too far from this village, but I was still surprised to see her here. On the other hand, it was probably why this place had a mind to somewhere to escape to. Anyway, what options did I have right now? Turn around and leave? Hide? Obviously, after everything that happened, there was zero reason Himitsu had to know where I was. I didn't know what kind of rumors were circulating about us at school. I would have liked to trust Himitsu, but at this point it would have been both foolish and dangerous. But I just froze, unable to take a single step. The first option for most mammals, in a dangerous situation, in the face of a serious threat, is to freeze and hide. While I tried to force myself to run, Himitsu noticed me. Nikolai? And then I finally managed to turn and around and start walking away. Nikolai, it's you, right? It was too late. I stopped and waited for her to come. What are you doing here? And you? I'm buying food for breakfast. I see, how are you? I've been so worried and now you're just joking around. They told us at school you and Iwamura kidnapped Kobayashi-senpai and then you disappeared? What was I supposed to think? That you ran away or were arrested? I spent so many nights crying, not knowing whether you were dead or alive, and here you are, healthy, fine, and smiling like nothing happened. The thing is, so many things have happened, I don't even know where to start. What about Iwamura-senpai? Is it true you kidnapped her together? Wait a minute. I'll just start throwing accusations at me. Oh, I see. She's about to frown, then pursed her lips as if she was going to cry. If you really did it, my dad can help you. No need. I quickly waved my hands. Definitely no need for that. I'm just waiting for a word to your father about this, got it? But why? Because it's my business. Once everything settles down, I return to Tokyo. I lied. I doubted the corporation would ever leave us alone. Suspicious came to your house several times, trying to see something in the windows. Do you know how worried I was? Sorry. Why should I care about your apologies? My nerves aren't gonna regrow themselves, you know. I'm not having it easy, you know. I understand that you're worried, but I was the one who had to leave everything in behind and run away. Your father won't be able to help. He'd only make the situation worse. Who would believe us? Me, if I say I'm not guilty? I'd become an accomplice of Kagome's just by silently watching her hold Ellie hostage. And I couldn't abandon the girl, even if I was less guilty than her. So, is Iwamura-senpai with you? She wrung her hands pitifully. Not enough, last time I saw. Yeah, I can tell you're lying. Why would I lie about that? If you knew her so, there is something between you two. This is why she was really worried about. Mitsu, there's a lot you don't understand, and I can't explain it to you. Both because I actually just can't, and because things are very complicated. So don't jump to conclusions. Everything's gonna be alright with me. I've settled down just fine, and I'm not gonna die yet. Nikolai? She drawled poignantly and shifted her grip on the grocery bag. And you, are you gonna be here long? Today's the festival. The festival? I asked a bit too loudly. I didn't even know where you going. Is that where you came? I'd really like to tell you the whole truth. I couldn't think of a persuasive enough lie, so I ended up just keeping my mouth shut. Mitsu looked me right in the eyes and finally sighed, and the tension on her face eased somewhat. My grandmother is ill, so I'm not going to the festival today. Really? Nothing serious, I hope? I hope so too. You aren't gonna plan on leaving here anytime soon, are you? No, I drawled. Then I'll see you again before I go. I hope you'll find the courage to tell me what happened by then. Goodbye. I stood at attention, watching her go until Himitsu turned a corner. Kagome was already awake and made breakfast. Where'd he go so early in the morning? Just wanted some fresh air. I reached over to give her a kiss, but Kagome pulled away. You weren't this shy last night. I sniffed, but she didn't seem to be in the flirting mood. Alright, sorry. Nikolai, stop apologizing. Kagome shoved my side hard enough to make me fall to the floor. I didn't want to tell her I bumped into Himitsu, but we had a good chance of meeting her at the festival, and though Himitsu had said she wouldn't be going, and would she be returning to Tokyo? If her grandmother got worse, Himitsu would probably stay in the village longer. I had no reason to suspect Himitsu would tell her father or anyone else about me, at least on purpose. It would at least be naive to hope she wouldn't let it slip. Is there something upsetting you? Just thinking. About what? About what? I can get Himitsu out of my head, so I blurted the first thing. That came into it. We're like a married couple now. Kagome explained and turned red. If you really think I'll let you get to me whenever you want. I was about to say that I wasn't thinking it like that, but stopped at the very last moment. After all, why would I say that if I, in fact, did think exactly that? I was a healthy 18-year-old, of course I did. Maybe even more than once a day. Well then, if you try and get to me, I'll do the same. We have a deal? Great. An awkward silence descended upon our room. Only the sounds of the village waking up outside. So it's a festival day? I finally asked. Yes. Kagome replied thoughtfully, but then flinched as she realized something. And don't you dare spend money there. One Yukata is enough for us to have the money to save on money until the end of the month. Christ, want me to give you all the money and just keep some for pocket change? That's a good idea. Except, why would you need pocket change? Well, for example, to buy yukatas occasionally. I sighed and finally pierced the rice with my chopsticks. I'm not joking. Nothing has changed because of what happened yesterday. Nothing has changed, huh? Well, I didn't mean... I was talking about money. We aren't any richer just because we spent the night together. Obviously. I drawled. If this stuff earned you money, I'd be a millionaire by the end of a relationship with Catherine. So, you have to take these things seriously? Although if Himitsu spilled the beans, we might never need money again. Would we have to escape again? Maybe life in the village wasn't perfect, but would be better off anywhere else. And two, to agree, I was used to it now, even in the manual labor at the mine. I'm more serious about this. Yeah, I can tell. With the Yukata bot, we couldn't just not go to the festival. I would explain all that to Kagome. I woke up in a different world today, so I'm trying to figure out how to live in it. I really want to, and always have wanted to take care of you and provide a decent life for both of us, but that's impossible now. We aren't living, we're surviving. My fear, caused by something completely different, was making me say things I didn't really believe. Our life wasn't that easy. I wouldn't say we were just surviving. There were many good things too, so that's what you think. I'm not saying I dislike living with you. It's just, you've also said our finances leave a lot to be desired. You see. Stop. Kagome suddenly interrupted me with my resolve. Why do you never call me by my name? Well, I did have certain problems with that. I usually called Himitsu Sunshine, and Catherine was Katu to me, but I couldn't force myself to call people by their names. It seemed almost physically felt unnatural. As if I was calling my mother by her first name. Kagome-san. Kagome-chan? Oh, right, fine, just Kagome. I said, trying to sound as confident as possible. I was trying to think you slept with me just because you had nothing better to do. What? I exclaimed and even stood up, shocked by her words. For your information, I can be a fox sometimes, but I'm not a con artist. I loved you for quite some time, I just only realized it recently. Loved me? She asked quietly, staring at a wall. Haven't you realized yet? Yes, but love? It's a big word. What else am I supposed to say? What does it matter what words I use? My feelings, that's what's important. Feelings. Kagome was slouching over, as if trying to occupy as little space as possible. Yes, and I don't have to feel ashamed of the world I tell about it. I walked out onto the balcony, opened the window, shouted, Nikolai Anakin loves Kagome Iwamura. I'm afraid I can't yell that out. She ran over to me, grabbed me by the hand, and tried to pull me over from the window, but I didn't let her. Do you believe me now? I will when you close this window and calm down. I lingered for about 10 more seconds and finally closed the window. What am I supposed to do with you? Kagome sighed when I walked back to the table. You can love me just like I love you. Yes, I can do that. She suddenly said in a languorous voice slowly, cat-like voice called up to me. I told you I won't let you seduce me next time. You did. I'm not gonna read that. We walked down the street hand in hand. Most of the people we knew were just strangers looking at us in surprise, even giggling sometimes. Kagome only smiles shyly and turned her gaze away. You're braver than usual. Do you think I should be ashamed of something? No, it's just usually not so. I paused to find an appropriate word. What? Not so daring, I said and smirked. I thought you liked daring girls. Take Kobayashi. Oh, come on, what does she have to do with this? Move already. I softly jabbed my side with, or Kagome softly jabbed my side with an elbow. All traditional Japanese festivals look alike. Whether they're dedicated to the deceased, a local minor deity, or fertility of soil, there are always plenty of stalls with food and entertainment. That guy looks sus. You can catch goldfish, shoot targets with a pneumatic rifle, and of course eat candy apples. I immediately bought one for Kagome. We aren't here to eat. Really? I naively thought that was the main point of these festivals. Maybe for other people, our family budgets still haven't recovered from your yukata. The yukata's on you, so it is at the very least not mine. And stop already, you said it yourself that everything's fine. We're gonna see how fine it is by the end of the month when we have nothing to eat. I couldn't tell whether she's being serious or trying to make fun of me. Alright, you know what? I'll get a second job. Maybe I can unload trains at night. But Nikolai, there's no cargo train stopping here. Kagome said like a teacher correcting the mistake of an inattentive student. Well then, I don't know. If there's a will, there's a way. Maybe you should stop drinking with your colleagues on Fridays. Like it's for me to decide. Drinking after work was the only good work ethic in Japan. You could turn down the invitation once or twice, but if you ignored it all the time, you'd get considered strange at best. Although in my defense, I could say I didn't drink too hard on those evenings, usually being the first to leave. Besides, we can't just save money our entire lives. It's better to earn more than to spend less. Kagome said nothing, focusing on her apple. Local kids run by us shouting happily. At first they looked at me with bulging eyes. Tall, non-Asian men were an oddity there. But with time, people got used to me and my appearance stopped being a surprise to anyone. I suddenly thought that Kagome and I could eventually have children too. What are you dreaming about, Nico-san? Do you like children? Not much. Why? Because they're small, hyperactive, know nothing and obey no one, and they run around and scream all the time. Oh. I draw not knowing what to say. Why are you asking? She smiled. It's a bit too early for us to have children. That's not what I meant, just you see they ran by, so the question came to my mind. Besides, what children would we be having if you don't like them? I was talking about children in general. Everyone loves their own. Yeah, makes sense. By the way, you want to shoot some targets? I ran to the booth with the pneumatic rifle to end that awkward conversation. I didn't manage to hit any of the targets, so we got no prizes. Kagome refused to shoot, but at the same time, didn't make fun of my marksmanship. I thought it'd be worse. Worse how? Did you think I'd blind someone with a bullet? That's not what I meant. I thought the festival would be worse, more boring. Have you ever been to a festival like this before? Have you? Well, yes, as a child. With your redheaded friend? Yeah, I didn't know anyone else in Japan when I was little, and our homes were next to each other. Nikolai, you don't have to make any excuses. She didn't seem to have noticed that the mention of Himitsu had made me alerted. You haven't answered the question. I had when I was a kid, with my mother. Are those bad memories? No, it was fun. It's been 3 years already, but I still can't get used to not having her around. I suddenly felt terrible that I'd come to terms with my parents' death in so much less time. It's hard, I get it. She made a little smile. What would he do without me? Nikolai, really? Recently it feels as if sometimes I'm happy a restaurant burned down. But that's wrong. I didn't know how to respond to that. Of course it was hard for her to carry the entire restaurant on her shoulders, with her grandfather being of little help. And with a life like that, she was more likely to skip university to spend the rest of her time serving ramen. In a way, her current life was somewhat easier for Kagome. At least she was in charge of her life. I'm worried about Granddad, but if he's well... What do you think, Nikolai? What about what? Do you like her current life? Like it? That's not the word I'd use to describe her situation. Nikolai? Kagome stopped and stomped her foot. Of course she was wearing her usual shoes instead of Geta. I'm just trying to collect my thoughts and figure what's going on and how to live from now on. You know, not everything comes easily to me. And if I get together with a girl, well, I mean... I didn't want to tell her directly that she wasn't my first. If I like a girl, I usually don't expect her to reciprocate, and if we get together, it usually surprises me. You're underestimating yourself. Her patronizing tone sounded inappropriate, and her words hurt me a little. We approach a booth with a schedule for the festival. Oh, look, there are fireworks on soon. Let's find somewhere high up. I grabbed Kagome by the hand and ran to the torii, beyond which stone steps went up. To get into a Japanese temple, usually had to go up a set of stone stairs. The number, altitude, and the angle of the stairs differed greatly, depends on whether it's a Shinto or Buddhist temple, and there was more to it. Some say the more steps there are, the more powerful of a deity lives in the temple. Bull crap. Judging by the length of the stairwell, the local village wasn't guarded by the strongest of spirits. We walked away from the noise of the festival. It got not only quieter, but colder. Nikolai? Kagome stopped behind me and, for some reason, looked extremely embarrassed. It's a bit empty here. If you don't like it here, that's not it. It's just, I only realized how quickly everything has been developing. Developing? I mean our relationship. Well, yeah. It really was going quickly. Just the day ago I realized I loved her, and now we'd started making plans for our life together. If our relationship had developed in Tokyo, we probably would have only had a first date. Sorry if I'm rushing. It's not your fault. I've been thinking the same the entire time. Thinking about what? I've always liked you. Kamui suddenly blurted out and blushed as if she's trying to resolve this awkward situation with the exclamation. But I was surprised. Tingles ran down my spine and my eyes began to tear up against my will. I approached her, gave her a kiss, and at that moment fireworks shot up into the sky. In the distance, I could hear the happy sounds of the villagers gathered for the festival, but to me there were only the two of us in the entire universe. I could feel my love for Kagome with every muscle, nerve, and synapse in my brain. A pleasant warmth ran through all my body, and I forgot the cold of the night. I was sure Kagome felt the same. Firstly, we pulled away from each other. You should thank me. Do you know how it is for a girl to confess something like that? Thank you. Not that it was any easier for me. But, Nikolai, what are we supposed to do next? In that, she seemed ready to agree with any decision I made and rely on me for everything. But I had a pretty bad idea what we were supposed to do next. But in a moment like that, I absolutely couldn't show any weakness or indecisiveness. We can run away, somewhere close to the sea for example. Somewhere far where no one would know us and we'd never be found. What about my granddad? And Dad? That seemed to be the first time she'd mentioned her father in weeks. You'll be able to visit your grandfather in Tokyo sometimes. Right. After all, there are people living everywhere so we can adapt to. Maybe we can open a restaurant. No way. You don't want to? Then a liquor store. We don't need education or connections for that. But you do need money. Well, we'll earn it. You're good at saving, so I'll listen to whatever you say. That's hard to believe. I swear on my heart. I actually crossed it and Kagome laughed. Silence came unexpectedly, like a sea breeze. Of course, Kagome was just playing along with me, but I was grateful to her for that. And every crime has a statute of limitations. Was that really true? Have we committed a crime? Well, how do I put it? Ellie's kidnapping already seemed so distant, like a memory from another life. But Ellie hadn't forgotten it, and neither had Kobayashi-jun. Kagome frowned for a moment, then smiled again. May God be my judge. I don't know you had such a good sense of humor. What? You thought I was only capable of irony? You know the first rule of Sarcasm Club? Be more sarcastic? Oh, we got an Einstein here. So then, we're just gonna live like husband and wife? Seems so. It was my turn to be embarrassed. Funnily enough, before Kagome said that, I hadn't thought any of this could embarrass me. We were living together, but what choice did we have? She turned away from me, as if wanting to observe the people having fun at the festival. If you want me to, there'll be time for that. Alright then. Alright, shall we go? Let's go. We joined hands and walked down the stone steps to join the festivities. 10 minutes were enough for us to see the whole place, and now we're just walking in circles, passing the same stalls over and over. It couldn't be called a blatant lie. Sometimes to cheer up a loved one, there's nothing wrong with pretending or presenting an unlikely possibility as something that is destined to happen. Maybe the corporation will get off our backs one day. After all, Lily was safe and sound. Nico-san, are you tired? Not really. I am, though. Shall we go home? Home. Home isn't walls and things. You know, when my parents died, my old house in Tokyo started seeming alien to me. But now my home is wherever you are. Kagome ripped my hand tighter. I need to leave you for a moment. Alright, I'll wait for you here. Mitsu stood around in front of me. Once when we were in middle school, we started walking home after classes about daily stuff. We're studying the same school soon. If you manage to get in. Of course I will. Do you really doubt that? Not really. I'm just gonna stop talking through this flashback. My voice hurts. All those years Himitsu had lived with by the thought they would always be together. She didn't need anything physical as long as I was around, but I wasn't there anymore. To be honest, I didn't feel guilty for the fact that fate had guided us down different paths. Of course I felt sorry for Himitsu, but such is life and feelings aren't always mutual. But right now I was more worried about what she'd do and who she'd talk to. What are you doing here? Of course she wouldn't do anything that would hurt me, at least in her opinion. It really wasn't a good idea to go to the festival. If not run away as soon as possible, we should have laid low a few days until Mitsu would go back to Tokyo. Let's find a place to talk. I roughly grabbed her by the hand and pulled her aside. That hurts. Mitsu couldn't meet Kagome under any circumstance. Sorry. What are you doing here? You said you wouldn't come. Grandma's feeling better, so she stopped and frowned. And you, Nika, what are you doing here? I heard about the festival from you and decided to take a look. So yeah, remember the candy apples from there? They have a lot of them, can you imagine? Sunshine? I set out a habit but immediately stopped. Himitsu, we really need to go somewhere else. Are you hiding something from me? Or someone? The clock was ticking, and with every second, the understanding that would inevitably would happen nonetheless. Don't worry. Why should I worry? You shouldn't, that's what I'm saying. Why shouldn't I worry? It's just, you see, I don't know what you heard about me and Iwamura. What do you think about all that? I couldn't tell her we kidnapped Ellie. At the very minimum, that was a lie. Even if something did happen, there are good reasons for it. Suddenly, Himitsu almost shouted, "What are you trying to achieve here? If you want to tell the truth, don't say anything at all. I'm tired of all your missions and lies. I'm not lying. If you're really innocent, why do you run away and why are you hiding now? And if you aren't, I want to believe that you had your reasons to do what you did, but when you behave like this, I believe it less and less. Tell me what happened." Especially now I'd convinced my loved her and she responded with the same. Moreover, Himitsu's evoked a desire to protect Kagome in me, even against common sense. Of course Ellie didn't do anything wrong, but you can't say the same for our grandfather. I don't know what's gotten into yourself, but this is kidnapping you're talking about. You're talking about so casually, like you don't understand how... Oh no, I understand how perfectly serious this is. Just wanted to keep you out of it. I don't believe you. Let's not do this here. Why are you constantly trying to get me away from here? Because you'll take it the wrong way. But fine, it's too late now. Too late for what? Nico-san. Hey. I know this theme song. Kagome ran up to us, the happy smile on her face immediately giving way to surprise and the disappointment. It's you. You were Mura-senpai? Mitsu was surprised too, but then immediately attacked me. I knew it. Trying to convince her that she misunderstood something was not only pointless, but dangerous. What are you doing here? That's what's asking you. I have a right to be here. What right? Did he really not tell her my grandma lives by? Well, I mean... Nikolai? Kagome cast a wrathful look at me, but immediately shifted her gaze to Mitsu. And we're here. How's that any of your business? And you had the audacity to say that after everything you've done? After what you've dragged Nico-kun into? I haven't dragged him into anything. Are you denying that you kidnapped? Kobayashi? What are you? Policewoman? Why are you interrogating me? Girls. I tried to interfere timidly, even though I knew it was useless. If not for you, Nico-kun would be doing fine. They seemed to be about to pulling each other's hair when Kagome suddenly softened. If Nico-kun wanted to, he could have long chosen you and we wouldn't be talking now. But he chose me. I don't care how you lured him into your bed with something else, but I've known him. I know that he's capable of doing stupid things, but when he doesn't have someone to look after him. What is he? Your pet or toy? Grow up already. Kagome grinned. I just want him to be happy, and I have no idea what you want. I believe Nico can decide what makes him happy himself. So, to help him decide himself, you made Nico-kun an accomplice to a kidnapping and then forced him to run away with you and hide here? You've really done a lot for him. What if Nico goes to jail? Will you say for his own good too? Don't exaggerate. Me? Exaggerate? She flung her ups in the air. If anything, I'm understating. Not even Catherine was so destructive to you. Do you really think you love her? What will that bring you? Just back to Tokyo and me, Dad can help. No way. Shut up, you. Mitsu shouted suddenly. She was so aggressive I could barely recognize my childhood friend. Mitsu, calm down. So much dialogue. I wanted to come closer to her, but she waved her hand, stopping me. If you don't understand that yourself, Nikolai, I need to help you. Nobody wants your help, we'll handle it ourselves. Girls, calm down already. I begged. Here in the countryside, loud outbursts were even more inappropriate by Japanese standards. Yomura, you're a criminal. There's nothing else to calm you. It's dangerous for Nikolai to be in your company. He seems so animated in company, right, Nikolai? I can't just leave things like this. What are you gonna do? I'll tell my father, he'll figure out what to do. Do you really think that Nikolai would be better off for it? If you only knew why he had to do what he did. She said we again, but this time, Kagome's choice of words didn't upset me like it used to. If only you knew, you wouldn't be saying this. I don't know and I don't want to. A crime is a crime. Let's go to my grandma's place. I caught Dad from here and he'll pick us up. If you really love him, you should be more concerned about what Nico-san wants rather than your inflamed conscience is telling you. Can I say something? Mitsu, I can't go back to Tokyo. We can't go back. At least not now, when the circumstances are against us. I'd really like to explain everything to you, but it might put you in danger. Put her in danger? Between two stools, you fall to the ground. I'd admit she was right, no matter how much I wanted to believe in otherwise. I had to worry about myself, about Kagome, but clearly not about her. She wasn't in danger, and the corporation wasn't after her. I'd been saying all that out of habit. Are you gonna sacrifice 10 years of our friendship for... What have you found in her? Maybe you're that good at spreading your legs? Mitsu finally exploded. Christ, it's not about that at all. Then what about it? I just want to help you. I don't understand why you're acting like this. Do I really not matter to you anymore? It's not about you at all. But I can't leave like this. When we met in the morning, I still hoped that... And now... Things were getting dangerous. We could end up having to talk to the police. If you can't help yourself, I will. Mitsu yelled and ran away. In another situation, I would have tried to stop her, but when become the man shut the. So you met her in the morning? You really do always lie to everyone. How can I ever trust you? I knew you'd react to this, so I didn't tell you. Besides, Mitsu told me she wouldn't go to the festival. She came over because her grandfather got sick and was supposed to go back to Tokyo. What difference would it make? You're pathetic. What did I even do wrong here? Had I been the one to bring Mitsu to the village to lead her there? On the other hand, if I had told Kagami about her, we'd have decided not to go to the festival, and otherwise it wouldn't have ended as it had. Maybe I didn't want the Yukata meant so much to go to waste. It was hard to acknowledge that, for such a petty reason, I put not only her safety but also my new barely day-old relationship with Kagami. The crowd quickly forgot me and continued to talk and laugh. Mitsu wasn't a flash to me, but it felt just like I'd left her life behind me, and I don't want mine and Kagami's life path to diverge as well. After all, I only wanted one thing, to take a monstrous amount of sake as soon as possible and fall into oblivion. When I returned to the hotel from the bar, I'd usually do a few laps around the village to get some air, and return to our room sober. Kagami didn't show much reaction to it anyway, but now I wanted to drink myself into a complete oblivion and disconnect from reality for a day. In just a moment, I stopped thinking about Mitsu, Kagami, and what I had to do next. Having stopped at the stall with alcoholic drinks, and I'd already asked for a full glass and froze. This really wasn't the time. It wouldn't solve the problem, just make it worse. Sorry. I bowed and basically ran away. Almost all the windows were dark. All the villagers were having fun at the festival. The only thing I wanted to do was clear up the situation with Kagami. She was sitting at the window at the usual pose. I thought to take my stuff and leave, except I have nowhere to go. A certain Russian poet once wrote that love's bow has smashed against the daily grind. Do you want it to be like that for us too? Nika-san, is the problem you leaving your dirty socks everywhere? Well, no, of course not. I just want you to understand why I did what I did. Why you deceived me and possibly exposed us to danger? Well, Mitsu isn't that kind of person. We'll go to her then. Why do you drag herself here? After all, I hadn't told her about meeting Mitsu for a reason. That being, I expected exactly this kind of reaction. Something we call truth is a totally abstract concept. In the end, we all can see colors and tell green from red, but in objective reality, they only differ by the length of each light wave. Everything else is just the perception of colors created by our brains. However, Kagami clearly believed there was. Was I supposed to refrain from using useless philosophizing and apologize and admit I was wrong? Would it be better sticking to my guns and trying to convince her that I didn't have... that I hadn't hidden the truth out of any kind of malice? I understand I did the wrong thing. I also pose person dangers too, to a degree. We start finally turning to me. So you really think your excuses changes anything? Well, shoot me if you want. Maybe I should. What are you doing? Kagami didn't answer, doing everything slowly, methodically, even more proactively careful. Where are you even going this late at night? After that nice chat with your red friend, I'm not sure I can stay here any longer. And where do you go? It's too late now, there are no trains. You can go to your friend. She lives nearby, I'm sure she'll be happy. Stop it already. An awkward silence descended upon us, because I didn't know what to do next, and she didn't seem to care at all. Meanwhile, I heard a joyful cheering outside. I understand I can't go anywhere right now, but I'll take the first train tomorrow. I let her go. You can come with me. Where? I haven't decided yet. I wasn't quite able to carry on this conversation, so I just left the room and went to walk into the street. When I returned, Kagami had already gone to sleep. I sat at counsel with my pillow and went to bed as well, having pulled my futon to the corner of the room. This evening had seemingly exhausted me completely, but I couldn't fall asleep for all the good in the world. She laid quietly, couldn't hear her breathing. So the sudden encounter with Mitsu had ruined all my plans for a peaceful life that started to take shape. I couldn't really blame Kagami or believe she'd overreacted. If any other person was in Mitsu's place, a friend or stranger that could theoretically pose a threat to us, I would have been the first to rush and pack our suitcases. So were my attempts to justify Mitsu irrational, even harmful? Of course, it didn't necessarily mean that she'd immediately run off and tell her father everything, or report to the corporation. And of course that didn't mean we'd be immediately found, captured, tortured, or killed. But the number of assumptions were permissibly high. Was I prepared to put Kagome at risk just to protect not even Mitsu? No, my belief in her loyalty and common sense. If Kagome wanted to leave, we'd leave in the morning. How could they have gotten her so quickly? Even if Mitsu had run straight home, called her father, who immediately informed the corporation, now there was no time to think. I shook Kagome a few times and wasn't in a hurry. Then I jerked her from the futon. We've got to run, now. What happened? She looked somewhere past me with sleepy eyes. They've come for us, they're downstairs. Thank goodness we had all the essential documents and money in a small bag in order to ensure a swift escape if we needed. I'd hoped there'd be no need for it, but life had once again had other plans. Nikolai. We're leaving. Quietly. We snuck to the second staircase and took the back exit. It was our luck the old hotel had one. I only noticed that Kagome was still wearing a yukata when we got outside. She noticed my glance and frowned. It was so urgent that I couldn't even change my clothes. I'll tell you on the way. One moment, you don't have to leave. Next time you want me in the middle line, drive me notes. Explain yourself. I noticed no one spoke. You were right about Mitsu, you were right. I heard someone ask the landlady about me on the ground floor. About you? I heard them say my surname a few times. I doubt it was just a courtesy visit. Whatever it was, I don't intend to stick around and find out what they need from me. Do they have agents in every Japanese backwater or what? So they found us after all. You can scold me later. Right now, we need to get to the station and find out what the earliest train will be. Maybe we'll go to the sea or... No. What do you mean no? We ain't gonna run or hide anymore. Then what are we gonna do? If they found us here, they'll find us anywhere. But it was a Mitsu. You were right. It's not just about her. Do you really want to hide your entire life? Constantly looking over your shoulder, jumping in every rustling branch? Today you heard them in time, but tomorrow they'll capture us in our sleep. I can't live like this and I don't want to. Then what should we do? What are you suggesting? We have to return to Tokyo. Should we go straight to their building? I'm serious. I can see that that's what scares me the most. We have to go back. If you don't have a secret plan, it's suicide. You don't, right? Are you hiding something from me? Are we gonna have this conversation again? I haven't lied to you. Well, you haven't been telling me something. What's the difference? Then tell me, I'm listening. Let's just resolve the problem at hand and get on a train, then we can talk. It didn't matter where we'd be going, to the seaside or towards Tokyo. Let's go. The earliest train was arriving at the station at 4 o'clock in the morning. We were silently standing on the platform. Soon enough, the station manager noticed us, came closer, and asked where we'd be going at such an early hour, and treated us with hot tea. I was occasionally casting glances at the street, thinking someone noticed me. But the time was going by, and the villagers were sleeping tightly and quietly. As usual, no strangers were disturbing its peace. I couldn't have imagined what exactly Kagome was hiding from me, but it seemed important enough to become a reason for our return to Tokyo. Why was she only talking about it now? Why not before? I was trying to guess what it could have been, but nothing would come to mind. I only wanted to get somewhere warm and sleep. The train finally arrived, and I virtually stormed into the carriage along with dragging Kagome along. Gonna have to end things off here. Oh. My throat hurts really, really bad from speaking for so long. I hope you guys have enjoyed today's episode. If you did, don't forget to hit the like button, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you in the next video. As always, goodbye.